Okay, so we are going to take a second look at the guidance simulator. This time we are not just going to track ballistic or straight moving targets. So let me run this so you would know what I mean. So originally what we had was this one. So if I then randomly release this, we've seen this before, where the targets are more or less straight. There are variations in terms of the heading because I randomized some slight noise in the direction. So for example, if I do that, the heading is not fixed at 151. Sometimes it goes to 152 or some fraction around below 152. So between 151 and 152. And there was also built-in speed differences, as I explained before, which is the number inside the parenthesis. So this is originally what we have, but what I'm trying to do now is slightly different. And so to do that, I'm going to change this to a different number. So that's the evasion of the target, and it's probably better to show it than to explain how it works. So if I do this, it doesn't go in a straight line. In fact, it is random and there's no way to predict where it would go, and the degree of the deflection varies every time I generate a new target or projectile. So sometimes it's roughly straight, just like that, so the variation is very marginal, but then there would be cases, and this one is also in a way marginal with very little deflection. But this one, as you can see, it's starting actually to go up. It's supposed to go down, but then all of a sudden it's now going up. So the goal here is, in contrast to what I had before, where the target was just on an almost linear trajectory from when it first starts, and so in a way the launcher, the interceptor, would have an easier time detecting and intercepting, calculating an interception point. These ones are much harder because of course they are moving, accelerating faster or slower based on some random noise, but also they have very pronounced side-to-side movement, as you can see there. So that's a much bigger target, a much harder target. So why am I doing this? To do that, we can actually just show this example. So in there, let me just show you a couple of small videos to motivate why I'm doing this. So here's the first one. This is from a video that I got from the internet. These are two interceptor missiles trying to catch an incoming projectile, incoming ballistic missile. So it's making a turn, and I think at some point it probably lost the target. And now you see two more trying to intercept, and it's curving. And if I pause that there, so you can see there's that incoming missile from the top left with that smoke trail, and then these two interceptors from the lower left curving to meet it. So now let me move this frame by frame. And so what's happening here is they're actually launching, the defensive team is launching two interceptors per incoming missile. So, well, you could probably work out the economics of that, but let's just take a look at how this works out. So the one on the left is a little bit ahead, so that one makes contact first and explodes as soon as it gets nearby, and then the second one also sort of explodes soon after, and so that's the target, that's a hit. So let me rewind it slightly so you can see it in real time, and it does that. Now let me show you a different video where I am now. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, 4 interceptors going up. I'm not sure if this is against 4 incoming projectiles. Let me pause it. I would imagine this is not launching 4 against 1. Maybe it is, but yeah, again, it doesn't make sense economically if that's the plan. But maybe that's just an attempt to stop this incoming projectile. So as you can see, it's very fast. So let me rewind it a little bit. But what I want you to see is actually right around there. Let me rewind it. Right there. I do not know if you can see it, but what I'm seeing is the projectile seems to turn. So here, I paused it. You can see that glow behind that dot, the top dot, which is diagonal to the top right. But if I keep on moving that frame by frame, that glow will start to be pointed directly right there. It's not vertical. So two things. One, maybe the cameraman is actually moving the camera in a way that's creating that light artifact on the video, and so maybe it is actually not maneuvering, but it's just the camera shaking. However, if you look at, if that's the case, we should also see a similar ghostly artifact on the interceptor, which is the dot at the bottom, and we don't see anything similar to that. So we could probably guess that that is a maneuver. So these incoming projectiles are actually designed to randomly move around, and in this case it's moving diagonally or sideways to evade interception. So let's watch it again. Yeah, it's very clear there that it's moving sideways. And if we, in fact, if we go back, there's also similar movement early on, but the sideways movement right there is a little bit smaller. It's not too obvious, that one, and then the big one is around here. Yeah, and so if we then continue with this, let me forward this. It's another capture of another set of, so this is the second barrage. So that's 1, 2 interceptors. Let me forward, going up, and here's the attempt by the incoming. So that one definitely is not a maneuver. That's just the cameraman moving. As you can see, everything moves similarly, all that, including the two interceptors. So that's not a maneuver. But you can see here, and if I rewind that, that's the first explosion from the interceptor, and it didn't actually get the incoming projectile, and there's the secondary explosion probably from unburnt explosives. And so the projectile carries on, and then fires. It has this behavior of firing its rocket at random intervals, like as you can see from the glow. It might actually just be somehow the debris or the convection trail or the smoke behind it is more visible at that altitude, but it could also be that the exhaust plume is actually because it's accelerating at different intervals, again to avoid interception. So we're dealing with both random diagonal movements as well as changes in acceleration. So with that, this is actually what I'm trying to simulate here. So if I now go back to the target, so let's start with a small number first. So let's just do 10, and the rest of the simulation here, we've seen this before, where I have 10 here as the missile speed, the interceptor, and let me make this as 2 as the turn rate, so basically 2 degrees per simulation step. It's really not a proportionate number to the length, but I just put it there to show some differences in the deflection of the interceptor in different cases. Here I explain this as the randomization of the target speed. So let's see how it works. If I now do this, also I actually changed this a little bit where I made, let me reset. So let's release one, and then let's launch, and then just to show how precise it is, I slowed it down. And so if I do this, slow down, so you can see that it is right in the center of the red object, which is now just a single pixel line. So the green interceptor goes into the midpoint of that red target. So let's do a couple more. Release a target randomly. Oh, it's too slow. No, I was too slow to slow it down. But anyway, we still have these two. And as you can see, this one is going to be right there. Impact with the red point. So we know it works. And so now let me go back to a normal simulation where we are going to actually let me go back there. So let me release from the left side. So here, let's catch all of those. Now these are just almost going in a straight line, so the deflection is not very obvious. And then let me release some from this side also. So yeah, these are not difficult to catch. So let me change the setting. And so if I go back here, let's change this to 30. So the variation is actually controlled by these two numbers here. So the momentum factor is really just a number that says, okay, keep on going in this direction. And so it's either 80%, 85% of the time, up to 99%. Basically, continue in the direction that you are in. And then the remaining portion of that is then controlled by this number here, which is a random, a normal distribution around this number here, which is the deflection angle. So as you can see, it could actually deflect quite a bit. Here it is 30 degrees. And so let's now, with that, let's go back. I'm not going to change anything here. It's the same as before, and this is the targets again moving wildly. So let's see if I can capture that. So let's release from this side. So yeah, it should be able to get them, but not the ones on the far left because they're too far. And so the one that the circle, the one that's going in a big circle, that's a miss. So it's kind of lost and it's trying to find it. Well, it actually knows where it is, which is the impact on the ground. And that actually tells you that the interceptor missile are not very agile. So as you can see, it actually needs to turn, but it's going through that big circle. So it's to show that here it will be. So this is it. This is at maximum deflection because it's trying to get to that point where it thought the missile was. So this is not very agile, and I think it's somewhat realistic that missile is going to turn very quickly. But anyway, this is also kind of poor design. That's why when I release a bunch of the very fast ones, it's unable to kill all the incoming targets, because these targets can actually change direction much faster than the green interceptor. So to simulate an improved, more agile interceptor, let me change it to 4. Again, it's just a random number, it can be anything. And let me now show you how it looks. Nope, that's not going to work. That's a bad example. So there you will see that the circle is tighter at maximum deflection. So that's now a lot more mobile than earlier. So if I now rain down a bunch of these guys, as long as it can get there, it's almost guaranteed that the incoming projectiles will be eliminated. So let's rain down a bunch of incoming gliding projectiles that can maneuver from the top left. So then they all snake in, and then the interceptors are also snaking its way in to guarantee an interception. And it can do that with near vertical interception, and then of course from somewhere near on the left side. The one on the left might not be close enough for it to intercept if it goes to the ground first, but it will try. So as you can see, it's doing its job. It just creates this tree, and yeah, it's just, there's no limit to what it can do. And if I slow this down a little bit, let's reset this. So if I just do one at a time, here you go, one, you can in a way see the pattern. So it's almost like the interceptor is mirroring the movement of the incoming target. So for example here, there it's in a way a triangle if it's on a straight line, but then if it's curving, the interceptor curves in the same way, in the opposite direction. In fact, mathematically, if they are of the same speed, it would be perfect symmetry. Well, there's a little bit of a lag because the interceptor would have to observe the movement first before it can make compensating maneuver. But here, the challenge with the algorithm is really to compensate for differences in speed, and you have to remember that the interceptor actually has no idea what the speed is of the incoming projectile. It actually also does not know its own speed, so it has no information other than the angle to the target and the changing angle as it moves around. That's all the information it uses. So it relies purely on that angle where the target is, and then it makes adjustments to its rotation vector. It has no control over the thrust of the rocket, so it just keeps on trying to rotate and make changes to its approach angle to try to close in. And again, you have to remember that I designed the simulation such that the interceptor has varying thrust velocity, so the V changes, so it's not known by the interceptor and it keeps on changing, as well as the heading. The heading has actually some noise built in, so even if the algorithm says, okay, I need to move 5, let's say, no, it's not, it's, let's say 3.5 degrees to correct my trajectory, the simulation does not give it exactly 3.5. It might be 3.2, it might be 3.7, something like that. And so the simulation keeps on confusing the algorithm all the time. And so that's what I was trying to perfect, that I'm able to get near 100% interception. Again, this is not direct kill because it's a simulation, so I have to account for a little bit of a proximity estimate of about 10 pixels for the detonation to take effect. But just for fun, you have this incoming projectiles, and I'm going to, and these guys will just go everywhere to find it. And of course I got hit there, so my launcher is in a way gone. It wasn't intentional, it was definitely random, but the one that got through ended up at the launcher. But yeah, they're all designed to kind of target the launcher in the general direction. So that's that, and it definitely works. Again, this is 2D and just limited by the 2D and some fake numbers that I put in, but the numbers I put in are in a way in relative sense, so there is somewhat realistic differences in terms of that target and the interceptors, but there is no, I did not account for realism in terms of the speed relative to the turn radius, or the that basically went back to its launcher and destroying the launcher. So there's no logic to protect against that. And so yeah, it works that way, and as you can see, it just decides to figure out what it can catch, and that's that. It looks pretty good, I think, because the important thing to remember here is this one does not have range to the target. It purely relies on angle calculations and making sure that as it moves along that it's able to correct for the trajectory and the interception based on the changing angle towards the target. So that's it. I will stop here. and we can probably, let's see, call it a day.